Daddy, what are you doing?
We're recording a podcast.
Who's listening?
Islander fans are listening.
Where are they?
Well, they're right here.
Welcome to the Isles Faithful Podcast with your host, Michael Sherline.
All right. Welcome back to the Isles Faithful Podcast. Today is January 12th, and this is episode 19. This week, I'm joined by Twitter user extraordinaire, I might add, JPinVA. JP, how's it going?
Hey, Mike. How you doing? Things are going well here.
Good. Now, I mentioned in the past, JP and I have gone back and forth on Twitter, mostly via direct message. I like his enthusiasm and his opinion. It's in line with a lot of us, and it took a lot of coaxing to get him comfortable enough to come on. So I thank you for finally giving in and joining me.
Thanks for inviting me.
So obviously, we'll start off with that strange win against the Rangers the other day. We were just talking prior to recording about the shot count in the third period and the strange way we seem to steal wins here.
Yeah, we're getting some great goaltending, and even though it looks horrible, the structure works. I mean, there's defensive zone breakdowns, but they're not like as bad as they have been in the past. So even a 14-1 shot count isn't killing us. So that's something to look forward to as we get to the second half of the season.
And second half we are into now at this point. Well, this is going to be what, the 42nd or the 43rd game this afternoon against the Rangers?
Number 43.
Wow. It seems like just yesterday, the excitement and the disappointment simultaneously at the start of the season was so new. And here we are, we're a half season into Barry Trotz's tenure with the New York Islanders. And, and I say this all the time, I still cannot believe that this guy is our head coach. Everything that comes out of this guy's mouth is just gold. The way that he deals with the media, plus the way that he coaches and deals with the players. It's something special. It's something I haven't really seen from the New York Islanders in a really long time, and I'm loving every second of it. How about you?
Wow. The difference is incredible. I mean, as fans, we haven't had a polished coach of that stature ever. I mean, you have to remember, even Al Arbor came as without a big resume in St. Louis, and everybody since has been, a question mark to some extent. Trotz, the way he engages with the media, the way he engages with the players, it's open, it's honest, and the results are incredible. So there's what you said about being, the big preseason disappointment. And if disappointment hasn't disappeared yet, then there's a problem with expectations.
I came into the year with low expectations. I think everybody did, especially in the media. We were just talking about the article, Down Goes Brown. I had posted on The Athletic the other day, which, by the way, for you listeners listening to this, today and tomorrow, once it's up, Sean McAdoo is going to be joining me Monday. So I'll probably have the episode out either Tuesday or Wednesday, hopefully maybe even Monday night. So keep an eye out for that. I'll obviously put that all over Twitter and Facebook here in the coming days. But expectations are a funny thing. Obviously, we're exceeding them. We're taking the league by surprise in some aspects. But the funny part is nothing really has changed as far as, player roster-wise. We have a couple of new faces, obviously, which we've all spoken about ad nauseum at this point. But for all intents and purposes, the core of the team is relatively unchanged, and they're still scoring at a similar rate they did previously, which is one of the things Barry Trotz said would be a positive coming into this year.
Yeah, I think the way they're manufacturing goals is a little bit different, um, especially from Wade's system, which was hyper aggressive. Uh, you'd like to say that they just wanted to score, but the lack of regard for defense really hurt them. But now their defense is where they're generating a lot of goals through turnovers. They're pressing a little bit better in the neutral zone. Their gaps are visibly much better, and it's even like with the last period, which was probably the ugliest one of the year. Um, there were a lot of folks that agreed with me on Twitter that even though they were being really outplayed, it looked like, hey, they're gonna create something because their top two lines are creative. They're getting goals from the best fourth line in hockey, and that even the third line is generating chances. Be nice to generate more and have um, Del Cole show up as a finisher, and I think that's what the second half is going to present. So
Dal Cole is an interesting topic. Obviously, he was chosen to be kept up, although he was a healthy scratch against the Rangers to get Ross Boss in there for some extra muscle, which turned out to be, a smart play because it seemed the Rangers came out of the gate wanting to play a physical game right off the bat. But, you know, I would be remiss if I wasn't a little disappointed in that Hosang was sent down only because of what he brings, and I've said this on numerous occasions again, I keep repeating myself there, but Hosang has been another driver of possession, much, in the same breath as Barzal. And I think the Islanders have been struggling, with him not being in the lineup the last couple of games. You obviously see the Islanders giving up the puck a little bit more or kind of chasing too much. And when you don't have possession, obviously we're going to see more shots against and not a lot of shots for, which obviously was evident in the third period against the Rangers. But going back to what you said about defense, the first period against the Rangers the other night, the Islanders kept everybody pretty much to the outside. They were stapling their guys along the boards and stymieing the Rangers forecheck. And that was a great period, the first period. I know we came out, trailing because of an early stupid power play, which never should have been. I mean, but that's another story. So it seemed like they got away from their game plan midway through the game there, and they were chasing for large stretches. At least, after the second period, it seemed like half the second period they played pretty good, and they were lucky really to come out tied.
yeah, like you touch on something there that's been an interesting point, which I don't see a lot mentioned a lot on Twitter, was the fact that they're playing a lot more disciplined hockey. Where even though their penalty kill is below average, it's not a big factor because they're taking a lot. It seems like a lot less penalties, especially in weird situations. I mean, we had the Komarov incident with 2 minutes left against Carolina, but the team as a whole, we're not seeing dumb penalties by Mayfield, which has been he's been plagued with in the past. Things like that. A lot less obstruction because their gaps are better. They're on the right side of the puck. Those things aren't coming up game after game where they're losing because of their penalty kill, which is, like I said, it's still below league average. It's a lot better than last year, but those are the reasons that seem to be almost transparent as to why they're actually getting wins, and people are surprised about games like against the Rangers where they seem to be getting outplayed, but they're not making those big mistakes at the wrong time. And when they do, they've been getting great goaltending. So I mean, that's always the bottom line.
Barry Trotz speaks about layers, and when the layers break down is typically when the Islanders aren't playing their game. And their game, for the most part, has been fantastic. Obviously, we saw over that stretch of games in the win streak that was snapped in Carolina, or against Carolina, rather. And when someone is going to come off the wall too early, or, two guys maybe aren't communicating and one will cheat towards the middle and they'll double coverage somebody and there'll be someone open. I think really that's what he's speaking about, in that, if you get past a layer of defense, there's going to be somebody in position to break up a pass or block a shot. And, the mistakes, again, when they've been made, there'll be two guys behind the net, or someone will be drawn a little bit too far out of position that'll open something up. And the Islanders have been extremely good at that. So over this course of the last 3 games, St. Louis, Carolina, and the Rangers, I don't know why, and I can't really pin this on the fact that Josh Hosang's not in the lineup, because he is not a tremendous defensive player. He's an offensive-minded guy. Granted, Trotz has gotten him to play a two-way game, just like he's gotten Barzal to play a two-way game. So I know there's been a large contingent of fans who probably disagree with me because of the record of Josh Hosang being in the lineup and the wins. But I don't think the style of play that they've been doing right now, you could really blame on Hosang not being in the lineup. It's more of, they stop skating, they stop playing smart layered hockey, as Trotz likes to say, and it's been evident in their game here. So hopefully this afternoon against the Rangers, they get back on, that string of hockey where they play smart, fast Islanders hockey, which has been such a weird thing. The Islanders have been labeled as having Islanders type hockey over the last couple of coaches, but it's kind of funny that it's true, because they play strong hockey, smart hockey, fast hockey. And, we might not really be the same fast team they've been over the last couple of seasons outside of Barzal. I just hope today they stay away from the physical stuff when they don't really need to. I mean, if McLeod's going to be out there, obviously you got to do what you got to do. But do you think maybe they bring back Dal Cole, or you think Johnston's going to be in?
I have a feeling that Barry Trotz is going to turn the tables on them a little bit at home, where with moving Dal Cole back in the lineup makes them a little bit more of a offensive presence. And if you don't put anybody out there that McLeod or any of the Rangers can challenge, there won't be any of that stuff. I mean, you need a dance partner. So you'll probably see Martin, but I doubt you'll see Johnston in round 2 of the Rangers Islanders matchup. And I think if in a game like this afternoon, I have a feeling that the presence of a Hosang would make this a 7-1 game, because the Rangers just wouldn't have an answer for him. Going into Tampa Bay, the turnovers that he may or may not cause, they'd be more explicit, and I think that's why he's back in Bridgeport more than anything, is because he started turning his game back to that hyper aggressive, which we all love to see. But those neutral zone turnovers are what really costs the team. They don't have time to get back into their gaps in their structure. So when he was pushing the puck to the offensive blue line and dumping it in, it was almost like hockey porn for folks that watch that, that are looking for that from him, because he moves the puck from zone to zone great, but then you can't skate through the wall. So when he was doing that, it was all pluses. But when Doug Waite said when he was on the ice, somebody was going to get a scoring chance, and unfortunately, under Barry Trotz, he doesn't want to see the scoring chances, or the high danger ones anyway, the ones where you're turning the puck over at either blue line. And he did a little bit of that in Bridgeport last night. We talked about this before recording. He had 2 assists, but he had 1 ugly turnover on the power play. So, I think we're going to see a lot of him next year, especially if Eberle doesn't return. But he's still a work in progress.
And it's funny about the turnovers, because Barzal, obviously, at times earlier this season and some points last season as well, would try to do a little bit too much, or he'd flub a pass, or you know, receiving a pass or whatever, and it would lead to a turnover. And for the last couple of games, I think Barzell has kind of gotten away from the safe play that would make some of what he would do successful. Like you said, hockey porn is funny because I love when the Islanders would get to the red line, dump it in, and have a strong forecheck, get to the puck first, or if they don't, make a strong play in the offensive zone that would cause a turnover to regain possession. So over the course of the games where we went through that winning streak, guys like Brock Nelson would get in strong on the forecheck, be physical, and that's the type of play even from him that we want to see. You get to the puck first, you wreak havoc in the offensive zone, and now you have opportunities to pass because you're going to make the opposition have some sort of disarray, and then it leads to a breakdown in their own end and a scoring chance for the Islanders. So when Barzell is at the top of his game, he's doing all the things you just referenced about, Hosang. So it's a matter of they're very similar in that they're both very young, very dynamic skaters and puck handlers. And when they stray from Trotz's system, that's when things start to go crazy.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Two things you've touched on about the defense, and it shows up in their offensive play as well. Is they're communicating so much better. It seems. I mean, we're watching games on TV, but it seems like even in the forecheck, the communication between the forwards as they go in, they're executing the forecheck so much better. The center play is incredible. Trotz is brought in where he's made Barzell a responsible forechecker. It's like having four Franz Nielsen's out there at times. The way that they're playing in the offensive zone and the neutral zone. Didn't think they were going to have, when we looked at the roster before the season, with up the middle being Barzell, Nelson, Filppula, or Kovar, or however you pronounce his name, and Cizikas. We thought that was going to be a weakness, but the transition that he's turned Barzell and Nelson into two different hockey players, and that's been incredible to watch.
To touch on Nelson a little bit before we move on, too, I mean, there are a lot of people who do not want the Islanders to bring him back. And I know he's going to be a pending UFA, and I'm attached to Nelson the same way I am to Josh Bailey and like I was to John Tavares, because I was at those drafts. And that's a player, when I was thinking about this last night a little bit, because I want to try to touch on some stuff from my past here with the blog box and, my blog, Isles Blogger. And there's a picture I post from time to time of Brock Nelson at the entry draft in Ottawa. And I spoke to him right as he got off the podium. I was one of the first people to interview him with Tom Talk Stuff, believe it or not, on Twitter, Tom Leodis. And as I was interviewing him, Islanders PR came over and handed him a cell phone, and it was Kyle Oposo, believe it or not, congratulating him on being drafted by the Islanders, another fellow Minnesota boy. So I'm partial to some of these guys because they represent a time in my life and blogging and the NHL in general that is kind of special to me. So, I mean, maybe I'm attached for the wrong reasons, but I've always expected Brock to be a different player, and I think Barry Trotz has brought that out of him. And to see him leave, especially right now, and then excel somewhere else where I know he would probably fit a need here, it is kind of hard to stomach. And again, it's maybe the wrong line of thinking, because ultimately I want to see this team win a Stanley Cup, but at the same time I want to see him succeed here and win that Stanley Cup.
I totally agree about Nelson. The thing about this is the 2015-16 Islanders were kind of in this very similar position where they had the team on a roll. There was consistency, and then through free agency, they almost took 3 steps backwards. Losing Oposo and also Nielsen walking. And obviously Matt Martin makes Cizikas and Clutterbuck 2 different players. But Nelson, economically, if you think about it, to get he's been the number one center this year. Barzell's been fantastic. He's the most entertaining player the Islanders have had since maybe Palfy and obviously LaFontaine and that group. But the transition of Nelson into almost a 20-minute a game player that's a plus player. He's generating offense. Things that were lacking in the past with him were the ways that they generate. I mean, he's played for 2 years without a puck mover, and now put Eberle on that line, and then probably next year Hosang. That's a dangerous line, and probably will be a second line with Hosang on it. And as Barzell evolves and matures to take the reins of a fully qualified NHL defensive two-way center, they have constructed a really decent middle. Barzell, Nelson, Filppula is probably going to be back too, just because looking for that quality as center on July 1st, there's not a long line of centers in my estimation that are looking to play in what is still the New York Islanders circus. I mean, so that'll be a big sign. I mean, I thought coming in Lee was going to be the number one priority. I think he still is, but Nelson's going to be number two.
I agree. And, for all intents and purposes, you have a guy like Duchesne whose name has been, floated out there. But to see what he's going to want to command, he has said he was intrigued by the route John Tavares took. And, they're from the same draft class. And the Islanders could have very well have drafted him instead, and things might be different today had they have. But I don't see a fit. I mean, they could always move him into the lineup and move people around. They could always put Brock back to wing if need be. But I agree. I think Filppula will probably sign another 1-year deal. Obviously, then you have Zizekas on the 3rd/4th line, whatever you want to call them at any given point.
Right.
But then you have Brock and you have Barzell. So the center depth at that point at the NHL level is pretty much set in stone unless they don't bring Filppula back. But then you can't really put a Duchesne on the 3rd line. Plus, there's still the issue of Andrew Ladd and his contract and what the Islanders are going to do for him should he ever get healthy. So, but again, Ladd comes back healthy towards the later part of the year, and I haven't heard any reports of him even skating or anything else. He's still kind of injured, and you don't even really know if he had surgery or what. They've been mum on that. So, but him coming back towards the end of the year, providing he can even come back, is going to be like a acquisition in and of itself. I mean, because he's a veteran guy, and he does at times provide some offense and obviously some leadership and everything else there. But yeah, so back to centers because I keep getting distracted. I think they're set there moving forward.
Yeah, I think plus you have Koivula developing in Bridgeport. When, as we were discussing earlier, when they moved him to center, he just exploded. So he's really taken to that position. So they have some depth in what was really a weakness over the summer. Just a coaching change and maybe a philosophy throughout the organization. They've developed now what could be two future studs at center with Nelson and Koivula. They're big-bodied guys that can handle the puck. They both have good shots. Nelson's a great shot, and that could be something to look forward to in the future if they sign Filppula to a 1-year deal and allow Koivula to develop. He'll get some NHL time next year probably, or maybe even at the end of this year, and it's the whole organization. Even though we still have all the players that brought in through the snow era, the development has taken a 180 to the better.
I agree, and I could see Koivula taking Filppula's spot, I think, after this next deal. But I think he needs a little bit more seasoning down at Bridgeport. I like what he has done, like we were just talking about. And once they moved him to center, he seemed to explode and really thrive in that position. And, that's credit to Brent Thompson. And I know a lot of people don't really like to give him much credit down there in Bridgeport, but you're finally seeing what he can do as a coach when that team's been insulated with some veterans down there. And I know that over the offseason, they brought in a bunch of AHL veterans, and, some of the kids now that the Islanders have drafted are sprinkled throughout that lineup, and they're playing extremely good hockey for the most part. So good for him to finally, get his his due down there in Bridgeport. And I hope to see it continue, because to build a winning reputation, you have to start at the AHL level and have that group practice the same type of philosophy and I'm at a loss here. Systems, sorry.
Yeah.
That the NHL will, because you want to be able to bring players up and have them seamlessly fit and know what's expected of them once they're in the NHL.
Yeah, I think Thompson has done a great job since he's been in Bridgeport, but you don't for a long time we haven't seen it, because when we do have those extraordinary players like Barzell and Beauvillier, they don't get to that coaching level. They go right to the NHL. That was a depth issue. But now we'll start to see guys like, I don't think Wallstrom's going to jump right to the NHL, and just watching players develop like Fritz and St. Dennis down in Bridgeport, you see the fingerprints of a Thompson, who's been a proven coach in the minors, and um, pretty good player too. Just a strong defenseman. So
All right, so the power play, obviously struggled here at times for the Islanders. We got two the other night against the Rangers. They obviously moved the puck around. I joked on Twitter. I said, "Well, it's like these guys just practiced the power play over the last couple of hours here between games and just focus solely on that." They moved the puck around a whole lot better. They weren't stationary. That's been their biggest thing, is they're stationary. They're trying to force the play too much, especially from Barzell back to the point, and around the perimeter. And I've joked about this before. The opposition would take that all game. You want to pass around the perimeter? Go for it. I'll let you pass around the perimeter the whole entire time if you're not going to take a shot. You're going to kill off your whole 2 minutes by yourself. So what do you feel made it successful against the Rangers? And moving forward, what do you think more they need to do? Because I've even said, I feel like they need to bring in someone personnel-wise almost to make it a little more powerful, because the guys we have, is it the guys on the roster that just can't get it done on the man advantage? They get it done 5-on-5 for the most part. But what's your feeling there?
well, I think they benefited by the Rangers defense a little bit on the Rangers penalty kill wasn't closing passing lanes. Their geometry was off a little bit. And they had a couple of good opportunities where the Leddy shot that was tipped in by Lee. I'm not a big fan of Leddy being on the power play. His hesitations hurt them when they in passing mode. It seems like a good power play quarterback is also, he's made that pass in his head well before the puck gets to the person who passes it to him. And Leddy will usually, stop it and then make another take a half a second, and that gives the penalty kill a little bit more time to anticipate that next move and pressure the receiver of the pass from that. And I've watched Pullock um, and Taves quarterback the power play in Bridgeport, and you don't see that. I don't know if they'll be 100% at the NHL level, but I really think they need to start pushing one of those two guys on power play one, where they'll also have guys that can feed them the puck, because they both have very good shots. Pullix is outstanding, but guys that can feed them and take advantage of the space that the power play lends you. That's time and space is the advantage. And when if you're going to pass it around the perimeter, that's great. But to make the goaltender move, you got to shoot the puck and you got to get passing lanes across the ice. And that's how Trotz has made a living off of that Ovechkin, one timer, and putting Pulock in that spot would, you might see an extra goal every 5 games. It doesn't look like that much, but what you generate from that shot is, goaltenders aren't capturing it for the face-off. They're going to generate more goals from the wizard they have in front of the net, which is, Anders Lee's tremendous in front of the net. It's just not getting the opportunities because they're not taking those shots.
I think maybe putting Dal Cole in Lee's spot on the second power play unit would be beneficial because he's got a similar frame as Lee. I think he's a little more offensive minded. I'm curious to see what happens once he figures it out completely. And I believe we talked about this the other day. I don't believe this is Dal Cole's last shot here. Obviously, it's his first real shot in the NHL. So I think obviously he's doing enough that the coaching staff is trusting him to keep him up and to give him some good minutes because he has been on the power play, but he's been on that right side for all intents and purposes here. But you spoke about Taves and how good has he been? I'm absolutely blown away. I knew he was good. I knew once he got brought up, he would stick. And he carries the puck. He's like a better version of Calvin DeHaan in his skating and the way he rushes the puck up the ice. He carried the puck against the Rangers and I believe against Carolina. He skated all the way into the zone, got a scoring chance, got his own rebound, wound up passing off really nice, getting back out to the point, or if he was gassed towards the end of that shift, would rush right back off the ice if they were still in the offensive zone. So it's been a breath of fresh air. And I like the way he's been quarterbacking, like you said, between him and Pulock. They've just been awesome on the power play, and I hope they continue to figure that out in that regard.
Yeah, before the season, when we all knew that we were going to see Taves in the NHL, and people were asking me what to expect from him, and I thought he was a young, probably green Nick Leddy. And the big surprise is he's doing all those things. The way he moves the puck from zone to zone, he makes a good first pass. He skates away from trouble, things that we expected from Nick Leddy. And I think Leddy's instinct has kind of left him a little bit. But besides that, I mean, to have 3 pairs where you have good puck movers, that's how teams make it through cup runs. We've never had a defense this strong, and hopefully when Hickey comes back, we'll have 3 pairs that are, that will have an offensive component and a solid defensive component as well. And we have that now, but there's some inconsistencies in the play with Pelech and Mayfield, who's been 100% better than he has been in the past. Just like I said, being more disciplined, being in place, picking his chances. But I'm drolling on. So
I can't believe that this is the same defense pretty much from last year,
right?
Aside from Taves, and they've gone from last in the league against goals against to first. Well, I think they're tied for first with Boston now.
Yeah,
but that's just ridiculous how systems and coaching and goaltending too. Yeah, and I've said this before as well. If Halak was still here, I think the Islanders would probably be in the same position because he's having a heck of a year in Boston. So that just goes to show you, if they would have brought him back with the defense and the system in front of him, I think he would be having similar numbers. Maybe not quite the same as Leonard, because Leonard has been absolutely fantastic as well. But it just goes to show you the importance of coaching and systems in the NHL. And I liked Capuano, don't get me wrong. I liked Doug Weight. I think Doug Weight eventually will find his way back into coaching at some point. But I think he would have benefited from being a head coach at the AHL prior to figuring everything out. He was just a victim of circumstance, in that he was brought right in to be an assistant coach or an associate coach on an NHL bench. And then obviously this fell into his lap. So
Yeah, I think Doug Waite suffered from the non experience of being a head coach. I think he he failed to make changes when they were absolutely necessary. And I think that was just a point of confidence. And sometimes you'll make personnel decisions, or you'll make system decisions and choices. And I think he stuck with a hyper aggressive system way too long. And the defense is, you could see the difference in there. There hasn't been a major personnel change. I mean, we lost Dahan, basically replaced by Pellick and Taves, because Hickey was there. Hickey's been a solid defenseman for a number of years, but the way that one thing I noticed last year is giving up so many odd man rushes, because you watch defensemen go in, below the goal line, and they weren't rotating coverage. This year, you're still seeing a lot of good defensive aggression, where defensemen are jumping into play and keeping pucks in down low. But the rotation is to see, you used to see Josh Bailey play that third forward high position. Now you're getting to see everybody doing it. Everybody seems to be buying into that, anticipation of a pinch, and getting back and playing defensively. Something that we didn't see definitely last year. I think Capuano kept them within their structure a little bit better, but now they're really buying into it as a team defensively. So we're seeing a lot less breakdowns.
while we're on the subject of defense and breakdowns, the Islanders, again, over the last couple of games, have had this strange issue creep back into their game of being unable to clear the zone. The goal against Carolina, it seemed like there was a breakdown in communication between the goaltender, I think it was Leonard, right? Leonard played against Carolina, and
That was Grice. Yeah.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
Grice. All right. Yeah, it was Grice. Again, so between the
Yeah.
goaltender and the defense, there was an exchange. Grice, I think, cleared the puck up the boards. They went off for a change, and then Carolina gained possession. I think that was the Williams goal after the power play, their power play.
Mm-hmm.
And they find him down low. It was just a calamity of errors. And then it kind of spilled over into the game against St. Louis. Well, from St. Louis to Carolina, and then into the Ranger game. I think we were held in our zone against the Rangers for like 4 minutes, it seemed like. So what do you see as being an issue when that pops up, and what can they do to remedy that?
Well, I think part of their evolution has been the players that they've brought in, and they've looked really good, and when you watch them as individuals. But I also think that's a lot of juggling to do mid-season, when these guys are still just 40 games into a new system, new structure. So it is communication, and it's the one thing I look at is, I think we've seen it at least 5 times, where Mayfield has made a backhand blind pass to the center of the offensive zone, and he's looking for somebody that's there should be somebody there, but when they aren't, that's a turnover and a high danger shot on goal immediately. And I think we're seeing that, where the players that they brought in, well, it be Del Cole maybe not being in the right position, or them making a weak clearing attempt. I think that's going to start to dissolve again in the second half, as these guys start to play more cohesively, and we're going to start seeing a little bit more structure. Hopefully that starts today, and definitely against Tampa Bay. They would not survive a third period like they did against the Rangers against Tampa Bay. That would just be ugly.
No, and we'll skip over the Rangers, obviously, because we played them the other night, and we're going to play them again this afternoon. the game that really concerns me is Tampa. I think it's going to be a test of wills, if we're being honest, because if they can play Tampa, the hottest team in the NHL over the last 30 games, it's ridiculous. The record season that they're having. And they've battled through injuries too. They battled through Vasilevsky being injured. They've battled through, I think earlier in the season, they had some defensive injuries as well.
Yeah.
But they are just steamrolling everybody, and they're outscoring and out hustling. And I think the Islanders, if they play their physical game where they're clogging lanes and they're preventing the forecheck and just playing sound defensive, smart hockey and stay out of the box, I think they will hopefully have a better result than when we were down in Florida the last time. So who do you see as goaltending now? Obviously, it's not going to be Leonard both games back to back. Do you see Grice this afternoon as much as Leonard played great on Thursday, or do you see maybe Leonard Sunday?
I put it this way: if the Islanders are trying to make sure they get the 2 points tonight, it's Leonard and then Grice, and you're basically throwing Grice to the wolves. But also like to say something about mentioned Pierre Maguire the other day on XM had mentioned that Colorado, since they played the Islanders, has gone into a bit of a tailspin, and he put the onus on the defensive game plan that Trotz put together to shut down that top line, maybe the best single line in the NHL this year. And since that happened, other teams have been employing the same strategy. And I look to the Tampa game as hopefully that same thing happening. It's a little bit harder because of their depth. You're not just going to shut down one line, but the structure that Trotz has implemented against the better teams, we didn't think we were going to be in games with, Columbus and Washington and Pittsburgh at the beginning of the season, but that structure seems to work. Now, Tampa Bay has been a juggernaut. I think they're undefeated against the Metro, but it'll be quite telling if Trotz can do the same thing and shut them down, and we make that a 3-2 game where we can, if we have the 3, we win. So that's going to be the sticking point. I don't think we'll win a 7-5 game, but we can beat them 3-2.
Their depth is what scares me, because it's not one line like Colorado, and I think that is what is hurting Colorado, because they've, outside of that top line, which is the top line in the whole entire league.
Yeah.
It's secondary and tertiary scoring is just non-existent for the most part.
Yeah.
So if you could shut down that one line, you stay out of the box, you're going to have good success against teams like that. But with Tampa, it seems that everybody can score. You've got, Braden Point on an absolute tear, Yanni Gourde, Stamkos, no matter what, is always going to be dangerous. Their blue line can score. It's just waves of offense in Tampa, and they've been like that for a really long time. It's kind of unfortunate that they haven't really been able to finish. I like Tampa in that, only because I have a lot of family down there, transplanted New Yorkers, obviously, and they've always been one of my second favorites in the East. So I want to see Stamkos get that cup as much as I wanted to see Ovechkin get his, but at the same time, I don't want it to come at the expense of the Islanders,
Yeah, I feel the same way. Tampa's one of my favorites, just style of play, and we do a Florida trip whenever we can too to see the Islanders play in both venues. But something going back to what we were talking about before with the Islanders, and Tampa has a solid 3 defensive pairs that all move the puck well, and that's where everything is born. That's the chicken or the egg, or whichever it may be, of a great offense. If you have 2 defensemen on the ice at all times that can move the puck, It's something the Islanders really haven't had, even though they've had, like we said before, similar personnel. But just the structure, their breakouts, um, they're moving the puck from defensive situations where they're stopping cycles. Until recently, we hadn't really seen a game breaking cycle where they're keeping lines out for a minute, and I think that's what you see in Tampa Bay. You don't see them being exhausted. And as soon as they get the puck, they're skating it out of trouble, and they're making those first passes, and that you're going to get high power offense when you have a high power defense like that.
All right, so coming out of this weekend, two games back to back. What do you think the Islanders do record wise?
If they get a split, I think I'd be very happy. If they get 3 points out of it, I'd be extremely happy. Tampa Bay's just a juggernaut. I'd almost expect them to beat the Rangers. They can't beat us. So
moving here into the trade deadline, I know we've spoken about this on Twitter for pretty lengthy things here, and you're an advocate of not making the same mistakes with pending unrestricted free agents. So what do you think the Islanders do, if anything? Obviously, they're probably going to wind up keeping Eberle only based on the potential returns for him. So do you see them adding? Do you see them adding maybe a big name, maybe some depth, as much as we have, knock on wood, some good defensive depth? We've been healthy here pretty much the whole season. Hopefully it continues, knock on wood.
Yep.
But what do you see them doing?
Well, a lot of it is based on cost. So I think the big move would probably, not to say big move, but to get somebody in like Dal Cole's spot on that third line. The big acquisition would be, like you said, to have Ladd back there. But they're just gonna, if they add anything, it'll be a rental for at that point. Or my big thing all year has been to target somebody like Falk, who now is probably not going to be on the market because Carolina is starting to make a little bit of a surge. And but a good defenseman that gives them depth in the second half beyond what they currently have, because Spiza is not the answer if we have a 20 game injury somewhere. So that's something that I think they might target. I don't see them, like you said, moving Eberle unless Lou gets the price for him, because he is integral to their offense, and you got to take the chance of him walking. I don't see him being an Islander next year just because of cost, as they roll into Barzell and Beauvillier, Pollock roll into their RFA years. They're not going to be cheap, so we have to watch that spending. That's why I also think Nelson will be back, and Filppula and Leonard. That hopefully those are some key keeps. We're just gonna have to roll with what we have this year. And free agents that walk are gonna walk. It's part of the game. You gain their cap hit when they leave.
I definitely think that they're going to give Leonard a deal here. I think that when you give a goaltender or really any player a show me deal and they show you, you have to reward them. And obviously he's going to reward the Islanders in taking maybe less than he'd be able to get on the open market because of that belief and the support that he's getting here. Also, did you see that new mask that Leonard is going to be getting with the fisherman?
I saw a picture of it, yeah.
There's a story that's coming out on that. I believe that Dave Art posted on Instagram similar issues that he battled over his life as well. So it's pretty special when you see people supporting each other like that. And I believe Dave has done all of Robin's masks from going back to when he was in minor hockey as well. Now we have a couple of Twitter questions. Let's see. We'll start with the first actual question. Is from Jen for Hockey, Twitter user @Jen for Hockey, and she asks, what in the world is Adam Pelech doing in the NHL? Now, Adam Pelech, obviously, for stretches over the last couple of years, has played some solid hockey, especially coming back from his thoracic bypass surgery or whatever the heck that was. But yeah, I mean, this year it seems he's not really excelling at certain points in this system, and it's a shame to see because he's been pretty solid. So I don't know if he's going to be on the outs here when Hickey comes back. I think that's my line of thinking there. So give us a quick little rundown here because we're approaching 50 minutes.
I think Pelech has been an outstanding seventh guy, the guy that you want to come in for 2 or 3 games for injury replacement. I think his turnaround this year from what we've seen in the past that was really inconsistent. Now you'll see some inconsistency from period to period. He'll make some bad decisions but for economically his cost, he's a great seventh and or just a very good one anyway. But I agree. I don't think that he should be getting second pairing minutes. He's playing a lot of penalty kill time, and their penalty kill needs to be improved. I mean, they're so I mean, yeah, I think he fills in, but they have so much depth at left-handed defenseman right now, starting with Aho, Van de Sumpel and Waterspoon. And I think that's where he winds up. He's got a good term on his contract, a good cost. His whole contract almost can be buried in the AHL if they need to waive him. But I think at this point they don't have the NHL depth right now. But as soon as Hickey comes back, I think they probably waive Spiza for the roster spot and keep Pelech as their seventh. And I think that's a pretty strong seventh defenseman. It could be improved. It's not the strongest in the league, obviously, but I think that's his spot in the future.
All right, we have another question that we just touched on, so we could touch on it quick. It's from Twitter user @slow_x. Do we go after Bob or re-sign Leonard? Leonard is still playing amazing, but there's still half the season left to play. Bob isn't doing so well this year. If you were Lou, what would you do? Go after Bob or re-sign Leonard and go with the Leonard-Grice combo again? Now, obviously, you already know where I feel on that. I don't think you throw the money that Bob is going to want at him, especially when there are going to be a bunch of free agent options on the market that could improve them in other areas like Panarin and everything else. So I think that they give Leonard a 4 or 5 year deal, maybe 6, depending on the AAV. And it's someone that I would want to see, obviously, back in the fold.
Yeah, I think a lot depends on what's going on behind the scenes with Sorokin. For a term, but I think, he's one of the 3 priorities right now for Lou to start doing the math on Lee, Nelson, and Leonard, to see where that, there's a whiteboard somewhere with those 3 names and some math calculating term and price. And I hope that Leonard comes back I'd like to see a 3-year deal, maybe a little bit more money than you'd see for a 6-year deal, but because I think they do have some future. We don't even know what's going on with Lindstrom, or not Soderstrom. He's so far we haven't seen any news on his recovery from, I think it was shoulder surgery.
Yeah, I believe that he had a setback, something with it was not healing the way that it was, so he's been shut down. I think Staple had that not that long ago.
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right, now we don't really have a question per se, but Isles Meetup Tampa wants to know when you're going to get your butt down there.
I was just down there. I was down there for the last Tampa Bay game. What a great group of guys, and yeah, we had a blast.
And while we're on that subject, if you guys don't know, all the meetup groups have their own website now, which is something that is fantastic to see. It's one thing that all these guys had similar Twitter names to keep everything cohesive and well known across all the different areas. Obviously, there are one group in terms of we're all Islander fans and they're all spread out geographically. But it's nyimeetups.com. If you go there, they have all their different meetups listed, a list of wherever locally you live across the country, where you can go and meet up with like-minded Isles fans and tailgate when there's games down in your area, or even at different locations throughout your state. So give them a visit, check them out on Twitter. The names are all, obviously Isles Meetup Tampa, Isles Meetup Charlotte, etc., etc. I guess pretty much that's it. There's not really much else to talk about.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for joining me. Again, this is the Isles Faithful Podcast. This is episode 19. I'm your host, as always, Mike Sherline. You can follow me on Twitter at IslesBlogger. You can follow JP at JPinVA. You could find us on Facebook, Instagram, all those funny things. We're available on iTunes, Podbean, Google, Stitcher, all the fancy places you could listen to your podcast. If you don't know, also, with every show that I post, there is a corresponding blog entry on the website, theilesfaithful.com. Check it out. You could also stream this show there. Thanks for listening. We will again be back sometime early next week. We'll have Down Goes Brown as our special guest. And there's some other guests that I'm working on that are super exciting. I still don't want to give it away until they're nailed down, on the off chance that it doesn't work out. So keep listening. Let us know what you think. Rate, review, subscribe. Thanks again. Let's go, Islanders.